But so I know like I'm do like research on people that you want to. I mean, I've been following you for a while, but I
Uh-huh.
kind of noticed that with interviews, I want to talk. I want to know your story. Like I already know your story. I want to share it, but like I want to focus more on the kind of topics that people don't like to talk about,
Do
and
it.
you've done it. And I saw that what really resonated, what really kind of clicked with me is when that video of Heather, she was sitting in y'all's looked like a
Kitchen.
stairwell area, and she started talking about how she went to the shelter with you,
Yeah.
and you know how they talked to the veterinarian who had to put the dogs down, and I mean it was
Wasn't a veterinarian. It's a
oh,
22-year-old kid. He's a kennel tech.
that makes it even like more heart wrenching. But when she said, you know, that the people look at the shelters like the enemy, and they're not, it really kind of hit to the core with me because I've started to notice as I've gotten more involved and you know started Best Life that there is this sort of like enemy made of dog rescue, and like
Mhm.
you know, and of course it's a super emotional thing. Like people need an enemy,
Yeah.
but I always kind of wonder, like, is it possible? I could be very wrong. Are we going after the wrong enemies? Like, are we kind of focusing on the wrong thing? Should we be focusing on the enemy, or should we be focusing on a way to like lessen the enemy's power? Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. I mean,
Yeah.
absolutely. We like to have we need to have things be black and white, cut and dry, right and wrong. And it's for whatever reason in rescue, I think because we're dealing with life and death and because we love our animals so much, it's a very polarizing landscape. So rather than be truly empathetic, like we are in many other ways of our culture, we don't like to empathize with kennel workers, with people that work at shelters, with people that work who might have to put to sleep animals. We don't like to empathize with families that might have to give up an animal. You know, if you've never been so poor that you couldn't afford to take care of an animal or you had to move or you lived in an apartment, it's gut wrenching. And we've had to give up a dog before when I was a kid. And yeah, we ought to have empathy for those people. We ought to understand their situations. And instead, what we do is vilify them. And then everybody chimes in and says, yeah, yeah, anti them, bad people. You're terrible. You know, you're a terrible person because you took that dog to the shelter. You're a
Yeah.
terrible person because you euthanized that dog. And rather than, I mean, if people just took a little bit of time to understand what's actually happening as opposed to the lies and fabrication that people put out there just to sensationalize things, then we get a lot more done and we could be a real true unified community. But we tend to want to have this deep enmity for shelters, people in
Yeah.
rescues. It's definitely transitioning. People, we work so closely together. I mean, our rescue wouldn't exist without animal control.
Yeah.
Animal control, my director, Nicholas Cullen is his name. He's the director of our county animal control. He's been one of my best friends and compatriots in all of this. And without him, we wouldn't have reached no kill last month for the first time ever. We wouldn't have this kind of cohesion that we have within our community. We wouldn't, you know, he's almost obviously Marley's Mutts had a big part to do in what's taken place in Kern County, but he's the go-to guy. He's the primary variable, and we ought to recognize that this is a big community of people who care, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of nuance, and there's a lot of variables that we choose just not to recognize because it's easier. And also, this is what I truly believe and what I think is really truly important because this same emotion exists within me. There are broken people involved in rescue. There are injured people, traumatized people who have energy in them that they don't know where to put it. I've been one of those people, and it's easier to lash out or to get frustrated or angry or polarized than it is to try to understand somebody. And really it's just a projection of what they're feeling inside. I've often been a person who's felt terrible tumultuousness inside of me and depression
Yeah.
and anxiety, and that will get projected onto other people if you don't live an examined life. It just will.
Yeah.
And there hasn't been enough examination within rescue to correct that. But I've seen a big change in the last several years. There are so many rescues that get along with each other, that love one another, that all respect one another. I mean, the people that I look to the most are in the rescue community. The people that inspire me the most are in the rescue community. So I think we're doing a lot better than we were, and I think we're trucking along in the right direction.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. I think that's why like it's like if we have more people build on that, because we have people like you in Kern County, the rescues that you're working with, and you're right, it's kind of like almost starting and it's like building
Mhm.
out. And so it's almost kind of like get the message out there of, hey, we're working together. And I remember we signed on Axe Philly as one of our rescue partners that get the 1-for-1 donations. And I was so excited to sign them on because I watched how Philadelphia has been this city with pretty extreme homeless pet, population, pet homelessness, and overrun shelters and things like that. And this Axe Philly, this one, thing working together with the other ones, have totally just gone above and beyond for improving how they take care of the dogs. They've created like a hotline where people can call and get help for getting food, behavioral training, to prevent, animals from being surrendered and getting to keep them with the family and avoid that gut wrenching,
Mhm.
pain. And we signed them on, and we had some rescue groups kind of question what are you doing? Yeah, they're a kill shelter. They kill a lot of animals, and I'm like, and it kind of made me like not like laugh. I was just kind of, man, it's like we've created shelters to be this entity, like this object of
Well, we've
like
created
bad.
shelters to make it like they're concentration camps,
Yeah, like they
that are
want to be there, like they want to
that
kill the
yeah that are
dogs.
manned by SS soldiers that are putting to death people who don't deserve it. And
Yeah,
there are a lot of very deep misconceptions uh, about animal shelters and about what you just spoke of. I mean, what is a first of all, the best advocates I know, the people who have rescued more animals. I mean, I've probably fostered 1,000 dogs. I know people who have saved well more dogs than me, and every single one of them works at the animal shelter. So the biggest advocates I know are Marcia, are people that work at our local shelters, and all those hundreds of dogs that are coming in every week. They're the ones that are getting on social media. They're the ones that are taking those cases and making sure and advocating. They are the first
yeah,
line of defense. They are the advocates. And we ought to prop them up. We ought to support them. We ought to try to empathize with them. We ought to try to understand what they deal with on a daily basis. But in the rescue realm, you're going to get we depend on social media so much for circulation, for fundraising, for information, for all that. If you do a post that is supportive or just bland, it's not going to do much. But if you do an anti-post, if you do an anti-post that's negative to some to the bad dog killer people, then everyone jumps on your page and there's this rah rah and this everyone chimes in, and it's a very low frequency. It's a very low living frequency of fear, of misunderstanding, and it's almost intentional misunderstanding, which
yeah,
I really don't agree with, because we can't solve this problem unless we work together. And when we've proven that when we do work together, we can get the sky's the limit. But if we alienate, malign one another, it's just never in the history of the world been successful. So we really need to change that. And I think it is. I think those folks that don't understand, that are being inherently negative, those voices are getting fewer and far between and are being crowded out by those who really understand the landscape.
I'm happy to hear that. That is like awesome because yeah, I kind of knew that we were going through that. I feel like, that society is kind of making transitional like progressiveness in so many ways, and kind of started seeing that resonate with the dog rescue. So to hear that coming from you, who's
Yeah.
far more connected and, notices
Mhm.
way more, that's like joy. It's just like, like
Well, it's
erupting.
really tough for me to talk about because I don't understand why people don't get it. Our shelter has a capacity of 300. If there are more dogs than that, then they have to start doubling up kennels. And when you double up kennels, you violate shelter medicine protocols. You invite fights. You invite so what are they supposed to do if our community keeps bringing animals into their facility, dropping them off, picking them up off the streets? If that keeps happening, what are they supposed to do? They don't have any other means. That's
Yeah.
our job in
Yeah.
rescue. We're the ones who are supposed to pick that up and then go from there. So we ought to be, we ought to be looking long and hard at ourselves and what we can do to advocate and get better, as opposed to trying to, you know, take their inventory.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I saw, there's when I went, you go down the rabbit hole and you start like learning all this
For
stuff,
sure.
and saw like, like articles about like, oh, this shelter has reached, 100% no kill status, which is great. I'm not like, but they took in, 1,000 dogs last year and 1,000 are, like adopted out. And then there's an article talking about, big shelters like Axbilly and the one, in DC, and they're like, oh, they have a 75% kill rate. And, they took in 22,000 dogs and only, 16,000 were adopted. I'm like, that's 16,000 dogs. Like, that's so many dogs, And I really love that you said that, like, as a community, it's our responsibility, not the shelter. It's our responsibility as a society, as a community, to help the shelters, and even to help people that are unfortunately having to go through that situation of surrendering. And I love that, because that is essentially, kind of what like Best Life is trying to do. Is we're actually trying to make that community bigger of people who want to help, because we're kind of stuck in this circle of like people who know about rescue, and then there's people on the outside that like have very skewed misconceptions about it, to no fault of their own, unfortunately, like we kind of talked about. Like,
part of it is what we put out there, right? It's that toxic stuff that we put out.
Yeah, and like, you see the commercial showing like these sad, like, kind of dirty disease thing, like, adopt a dog, and of course people will be like, what? No. Like, I get it.
Sarah McLachlan guilting people into into change is just not effective.
Yeah.
That's why we really try to focus on the, you always got it. There's always going to be a negative side or something that is challenging. I won't say negative, but there's so much, these stories, like Cora here, the story arc for Cora, being able to tell her story is so incredible. And that's how we get people into rescues. You see what, and into shelter work, is you see these just diamonds in the rough that exist, that we can really, that serve to better our lives in so many ways, and serve to show us an example for how to live, and inspire us, and show us what we're capable of, and
give
just
us better leg workouts going up the stairs.
Yeah, exactly. Inspire our morning lunges. So, there's there are a lot of pages I follow that are really inherently positive and good. There's a bunch of rescues in Los Angeles that we kind of follow and emulate, and it's all headed in the right direction. I truly believe. But at the end of the day, I just really hope folks understand that kennel technician who has to assist the veterinarian in euthanizing, in some cases, hundreds. I remember one time in particular, I went to the shelter to pick up a bunch of dogs, and because of what was happening, they were absolutely overwhelmed. At that time, it was something like 60% euthanasia. And I went and spoke to the person, the shelter manager, who was in charge of all of the dogs and in charge of euthanasia. And she and one of the other kennel technicians had gone through 153 dogs that day already. And I could see it in their face, how destroyed they were. I could see how they had nothing left, but both of them had to go to work the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And can you imagine, on top of feeling, you work at a shelter, so these people voluntarily put themselves in that frenetic, chaotic, cacophonous environment. Working in a shelter is different. It's dirty, it's loud, it's chaotic, it's emotional, it's saddening, it's uplifting, it's a roller coaster, it's all of those things. And I think if we just took a minute to empathize, we would have this true admiration for these individuals who wake up and do this every single day, instead of trying to, it seems like the most evil thing you could possibly do, that to malign people like that, who are showing up every single day in a way that's bigger than most people will ever show up in their life for animals. So, man, hats off all the time, from my family to anybody who works in a kennel situation. Hats off always.
This is our moment to say thank you, guys. We're supporting you. We're with you. We're going to do everything that we can to help. Like, as a team, we're all teaming up.
Yeah, rescues ought not try to build up their support network or their profile or their whatever by trying to tear down real human beings, real people who work at shelters and try to do the best. I've met maybe a couple in the hundreds of kennel technicians that I've met in the years. I've maybe met a couple of people that I didn't get along with, but the vast majority of them were there for the right reasons. They work their asses off, and they really do their best to save animals. And they are our first line of defense, in many cases our last line of defense, and they deserve to be propped up and appreciated as opposed to torn down.
Yeah, I love it. Totally agree. And thank you for talking with me about that, because we can post it out there and keep going and spread the word more. And so I want to go back to like bringing more people into rescue, because I think we're, as a rescue community, as a society, we're headed in the right path for that. social media is helping us educate. We have like the real Bubbins, Jason with Bubbins in the books. They're educating children about, wanting to adopt shelters. So it's almost like start them young. I think congratulations, by the way, on Emily. She's probably already rescued like 20 dogs. So like, we're getting more and more people when they're younger to want to dog rescue and want to keep doing that. How do you I always like to ask and see different ideas. What ways of because nobody ever likes to be lectured, you should rescue because of this. What are some ways of education or awareness, like different ways that we can kind of almost make dog rescue hip and cool and like why wouldn't you want to,
Yeah. Well, for us, I can just speak directly to how it's impacted our family, by, rescue isn't just rescue. Rescue is an ideology, and um, rescue is a routine that you have to integrate with your family. So, the ideology is that every single life matters and that we ought to go out of our way to recognize and appreciate every life. That's something that's critical for our children to understand. Empathy leads the way, and empathy leads to a true understanding of what love is and all the rest of it. So, and rescue is really, serving something that can't serve itself, being of service in general, and finding a purpose is a key variable to the human experience. If you don't have that purpose to drive you or to tap into, your human experience is unfull, is incomplete. From a practical in-home standpoint, what rescue has done for us has helped me raise my kids. My 2.5-year-old is rescue obsessed. She's been around so many animals her early life, and she's gotten to understand what owies are and what resilience looks like and what gentle is, and what she has a deep core. Well, first of all, it exists in all children. Sometimes we don't have the ability to expose our children to that much, but being in rescue, constantly having foster animals around, my kids are always exposed to serving something. They're exposed to taking care of owies, they're exposed to medicine, they're exposed to cuddles and all of that, and that's it's been a critical tool, and I am sure will pay dividends down the road when my daughters turn out to be amazing people.
They will, and yeah, and even we could even say it's going to help, like you said, it's going to help them in all aspects of life, to be able to sit there and know that, okay, I have the strength because Cora, okay, so I've broken my leg and I'm out of the track team for the school year, but there's always next year. So I just feel like you're right. There's a way that we can let people know that it'll help families and help children grow up to be stronger, just kind of more hopeful, more
It's
like
getting people involved. I just think
Yeah.
that's the way to get people involved. If we speak from our personal experience within rescue, people are going to go, oh, I thought it was a bunch of chain smoking 65-year-olds who, and except, which was my perception when I first got it. Not that that was bad, but everybody I knew in my region was an older woman, a retired older woman who smoked cigarettes, But I just think, I think one of the best ways to promote rescue and get people involved is to talk about how we're succeeding. So to talk about the difference that we've made along the way, to talk about the community that it's created, and to talk about, just on a personal level, what it does for our family, what it's done for our family. We rescue a dog every Christmas, so that'll be happening. We bring them in, and just having that experience, getting to do that as a family, getting to show that to other people, I'm sure that has brought in a lot of folks. And when you get to show your kids what living for something else is, what service is, to get to talk about service early on. It's a foreign concept, but it's to children really, but it's something that is fundamentally necessary to creating a full life and a rewarding life. And that's a big part of what rescue is.
Yeah, I love it, and that's awesome. It's really cool. And so, just like a random question, we kind of already talked about it, but if right now, someone granted you the wish, you could change one aspect of just the whole dog rescue community, or community, society, for everything. If you could change one aspect of it, poof, like that, what would it be?
Access to training, 100%. We have nationally, we are on the track towards no kill. We're on the track towards fewer than 5 to 10% euthanasia. where we're not going to be able to get below that 5-10% are behavioral case dogs and medical case dogs. So we've always done medical and behavioral cases, but it's challenging. We're lucky because we have a big following that can help support monetary challenges like that. I'm sorry, again, I got killed.
Oh, sorry, you cut out a little bit. What was that?
I just got derailed mentally. What
Oh no,
was
you're
that?
fine. You're okay. I'm just yeah. You said like access to training, like just kind of one thing
okay,
that you could change
yeah,
about all
my
of it.
brain
No, you're
was
fine.
thinking about several things. So access to training is definitely what if I could snap my fingers and have something, have a resource that the rescue community had access to, it would be access to training. When I first started in this 16 years ago, there were no trainers. If your dog had a behavioral issue, aggression, needed sincere behavior modification, there was nobody. Caesar existed. Well, I don't even know if Caesar existed back then. He may have just started. But nowadays, there's tons of people who have gone to ABC who have trained with Caesar. I mean, we have 10 or 12 trainers that are on the payroll for Pawsitive Change, our employees, that are incredible individuals that can take a dog that would be a death sentence. That dog in that shelter, in that condition, behaviorally,
right,
cannot be adopted out.
Right.
But because it's in an environment that's not conducive to its wellness. But if you take it out and you have somebody who has the tools to work with, the tools to get this dog with another dog, the tools to understand its fears, understand its pain points, understand its assets and deficits and all those things, then you can save lives. So if we're going to get anywhere as a community, we need to have more trainers. We need to have access to more tools to create trainers. That's one of the things. That's why I'm so excited. One of the reasons I'm so excited about Pawsitive Change, our inmate canine training program, is because we're producing dog trainers that can enter the field and help us advocate for these dogs. The dogs that need the most advocacy right now are behavioral dogs, dogs that need behavioral adjustments or tweaks or need to be understood or empathized with. And we tend to want cut and dry, here's your dog, pull it out of the shelter, adopt it. And it's not like that. And in many cases, they need much more than obedience, much more than potty training. There's serious issues to address. And that's what's going to get us to true no kill, is more tools to address dogs who need behavior modification.
That's so awesome. Yeah, you mentioned Pawsitive Change program. I'd like to kind of go into that a little bit.
Yeah.
Awesome, incredible, and just huge supporter of it. And so go into a little bit of how you said that Pawsitive Change is putting dog trainers out there. Go into tell me about that. How is that happening?
Well, our program, the Pawsitive Change program, is a comprehensive inmate canine training program that's in many prisons in California and in a juvenile facility here in Bakersfield. It's the only live-in rescue dog program in a kid's prison. And our curriculum is intense. It's a 14-week-long program. It's immersive. You are training 14 hours a day while incarcerated. The dogs live there. They're following the Canine Good Citizen certification guidelines. So we're training certain testing points. It is, we are going into prison every week, and we're hosting class for several hours. It is a very immersive, very deep experience. And if you've graduated that 14-week program, then you can enroll again and again and again. So some of our guys have graduated 4 or 5 times. And when they are released from prison, most of our guys are violent offenders with longer sentences. So many of them have taken our course many times. And by the time they're released from prison, they are ready, in many cases, to enter the workforce as kennel technicians, as trainers. They have hundreds of hours of experience training dogs and interacting with rescue dogs. And rescue dogs have they have a wide spectrum of energy. So you get to deal with a lot of different dogs. By the time our guys exit the program, they have so much work experience. The pet industry is a $70 billion industry. And like I just said, we're begging for dog trainers. So many people are adopting dogs from shelters, et cetera, and they need help. And the pet industry has been willing to accept formerly incarcerated people into its bosom and help, give them access to opportunity. These are just individuals who have not had, they're not just, but in many cases, these are individuals who need some hope, who need access to opportunity. And that's what we're trying to give them. And these guys have changed the world. I mean, Jason Morey's, he's changed the world. I mean, he's changed his area of Orange County, that's for sure. The same with Jamal Henderson. And these are guys that were in our programs, got out of prison, and have helped change countless dozens of dogs' lives. Dogs that would have been euthanized, situations where parents would have not known what to do with their dogs because they didn't understand them. They've been the therapist for countless dogs. And I think something like 12 of our guys formerly incarcerated are working on the outside as trainers. Oscar just got hired, Isaac just got hired, Vo just got hired. So a bunch of our guys, these are guys that have served plus 20-year sentences.
Yeah.
So these are guys who are at a higher risk for ending up back in prison, at a higher risk of recidivism. And if we can offer them some access to opportunity within the pet industry, then they can not only support themselves, they can support their family, and they can help break that cycle of incarceration that may have affected the family. And they can
Dude, I
become
feel like
taxpayers and business owners.
exactly, yeah. And I also feel like it helps by giving them that, like we talked about before, that deeper purpose.
Absolutely.
It increases their like just ability to kind of like know like I've saved a life, and that is such like
Definitely.
a rewarding experience as a human being, and helps them be accepted, like you said, back into society. And so and the fact that you're having a juvenile program, you said there's only one juvenile program, and you guys have that, right? Are you hoping to spread
Only one
that to
live-in
more?
program, yeah.
Okay, are you hoping to spread that to more soon?
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about how. Yeah. Yeah. We'll hope that. Tell me about how the juvenile program is so different in terms of like you get the same, like because for me, my first thought is, man, you're in the juvenile program, so you're actually preventing them from like you're improving their entire life. You're preventing them from going to prison like ever again. Kind of touch base on what just like your thought process on that train of thought.
Yeah, juvenile hall is an intense place. It is an intense place to see little kids in red jumpsuits in concrete cells, with other kids in orange jumpsuits mopping the floors that are 5'2". It's weird to see a 13-year-old in a concrete cell. But we deal with the girls. We deal with the pathways girls. So these are repeat offenders. These are the most vulnerable in terms of heading towards a life of crime and incarceration. And there's a lot of things that jump out at me. One is where most of these girls come from. We know them all pretty well, and we know where they come from. We know some of their cases, and it's tough. It's hard. It'll rip your heart out, to be perfectly honest. There are some kids there whose parents could care less about them. They might as well not exist. There are some kids that the relationship we've been able to provide is the deepest relationship they've ever had. Where in many cases we're the only people that have ever believed in them. So on one hand, I think societally we need to understand where these kids are coming from. Where are our inmates coming from? Where's our prison population coming from? And again, it leads with empathy. I'm not trying to have you feel sorry for them, although potentially you can, but you need to understand where these kids come from and why, and what their background is. And we're treating them like fully developed. A lot of these kids are going to leave if they violate it again, and they're going straight to big girl prison. And none of them have ever had a shot. They've never had a shot, and it's important that our society understand that. And then the second thing is just the immense potential that exists within the incarcerated system. We have a tendency to, earlier we talked about polarization. We have a tendency to deal with things black and white. Those kids are bad. Those are bad kids. Those people that are locked up are bad. They're just bad. And you treat somebody like an animal, they're going to act like an animal. And that's what I've found. You treat them with respect and love, they're going to treat you with respect and love. And they're going to, most of these people just don't have any self-esteem. I've been there. That was the primary motivating factor behind my addiction and alcoholism, and almost took my life in 2008, and just helping give these kids a little bit of self-esteem and some reciprocal love. In many cases, they've not had reciprocal love. So being able to love on something and be loved back unconditionally for exactly who you are. Some of our kids are, in different stages of even transitioning. So there's also sexually transitioning. So there's a lot happening in terms of acceptance, and their dogs accept them completely, and we accept them completely. All of our incarcerated men we love and accept completely, and that's important, and we believe in them. We don't refer to them as inmates. They're our brothers and sisters, and they're our students, and they're dog rescues. That's how we try to refer to them. I mean, it's important that people understand that they are inmates or prisoners, but it's also important that they understand that they're incredible human beings, many of them, most of them, that they have an immense amount to offer, and that their potential is limitless, and that we've not yet tapped into it. So that's what I view of our that's what I view most of our dogs as well. And that's, I think, why our incarcerated population can relate so well with our dog population
I go a little hand
is
in hand.
yeah, they're throwaway dogs and throwaway people, locked up in a shelter, locked up in a prison, and thrown away, forgotten about, abandoned, thrown away, forgotten about. They those guys and those gals can relate to those dogs, probably more than most people. And I just think it's magical. I just think one of the things that this program does is help uncover who people are. And by that, I mean, they start to get some self-esteem, they start to have some success, and they start to love themselves a little bit. I'm someone who struggled for my whole life with self-love. And I don't know that I have it now, but I can at least have some appreciation for some of the things I do. And to watch these guys and gals develop appreciation for themselves and a little bit of pride and a little bit of self-esteem is critical, and it helps ensure that they can be released and not end up back in prison.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, just like that little bit of self-love, it can transform somebody. It can make them
Totally.
behave differently, think differently, treat people differently, talk differently. I experience that firsthand. And that's incredible. And we see that, like you said, with dogs too. You see the videos of this, fearful, aggressive dog, and then all of a sudden they pet him and you almost see the dog go, oh, okay. And it's just a totally, complete 180. And you mentioned the comment about how we haven't tapped into this yet. How do you believe that we could utilize what you guys are doing with the Positive Change program? How can we utilize that not only for inmates and prisoners, but as a more widespread thing to help more dogs and people?
That was a great transition. Nice work. Best question of the interview. So positive change can be scaled. Positive change can be scaled. It can be disseminated to every community in the United States. Almost every community in the United States has an animal shelter. Almost every community in the United States has a prison or a jail. Almost every community in the United States has a substance abuse problem. Almost every community in the United States has rehabs and sober living facilities. So our goal is to take the positive change curriculum and continue to change lives, rehabilitate human beings, rehabilitate dogs, provide them access to opportunity, and do that on the biggest scale we possibly can. We just need financial support. It's not coming from the government. We can't get it from the government. It should be. I mean, for every inmate we prevent from going to prison for 1 year, for every formerly incarcerated individual who's released and doesn't go back to prison, we save them, California, $80,000. $80,000 a year per person. So of the 20-something guys, just do the math there, and it pays off. But the idea of rehabilitating an animal along with yourself is what got me to where I am now. Rehabilitating, I was in liver disease when I started Marley's Mutts. I was in liver failure, and I needed a liver transplant, period. And I needed 6 months of sobriety. I didn't know how to get any of those things. My dogs are what got me there without killing myself. They're the only reason I'm sitting here alive in front of you. And so I think that mutual rehabilitation, that reversed rescues, to quote my boy Ty Freeze, is critical. It's just such a profoundly powerful relationship. We've co-evolved with dogs for 50,000 years. They are part of our families, literally. They always have been. They've helped us survive. We've helped them survive. And we each provide one another with something essential. And I just want to, with our program, we can really take this bond, this incredible bond, and use it for rehabilitative good, around the world. And the sky's the limit to what we can achieve with that. We're really only just tapping into the human-animal bond and what it's capable of. But I mean, everything from even just we've had our therapy dogs present for, we have a 12-step program, 12 steps of dog training, 12 steps of recovery, that we host at the Mission at Kern County. And when dogs are present, we always have dogs present, the shares, the vulnerability, the connectivity that occurs because dogs are present is second to none. You hear about kids, like with CASA, court appointed special advocates, where they have dogs that will sit with these kids while they testify against bad people, to give them the courage to be vulnerable. And it certainly gave me the courage to be vulnerable. When I started in this, people don't really understand this, and I get why they don't, because I can be a pretty outspoken person, but I was scared of everything. I didn't talk. I was completely introverted, and I was scared of everything. I was in liver failure. I didn't want to be I didn't want to be on this earth, period. I didn't know how to live soberly. And my dogs were the difference. They were the thing that got me to where I am now. And they bridged the gap of my depression. They bridged the gap of my suicidal ideations. They gave me that love I needed. They gave me that purpose. I mean, all of those things that I desperately needed, and I wouldn't have gotten from somewhere else. I wouldn't have gotten from my dad or my mom. That didn't work for my whole life in terms of correcting my sobriety.
Yes, yeah, of course.
And yeah, I just think the what occurs between a broken animal and a broken person, or a traumatized dog and a traumatized person. I'm gonna get emotional. It's just magical. Dogs are medicine. They are absolute medicine. And we have a tendency to stay at the top and not allow ourselves to get too deep. Some people will pet the dog, or I'm not really a dog person, and I get all that. But there's a deep healing that can take place if you open yourself up to the medicine that is dogs. And it can be cats and horses and everything, but there is a real special medicine there, and it's healing, and it's introspective, and it's all kinds of things. Your relationship with your dog will cause you to become a better person. It really will.
Yeah, I mean, I can completely agree. And how you said, people won't believe that you're actually like introverted, and being on camera is almost, when you said that, I really resonated, because with starting Best Life and having Mr. Breakfast's Instagram, people need to see you and they need to know who you are. And I can't tell you how many times I've been trying to be on video and say something, and I'm like, okay, wait, and then Mr. Breakfast comes next to me, and I'm like, golden, man. I'm like, yeah, I'm ready for this. It's incredible. Walking down the street, I walk to the coffee shop, and I'm by myself, and I'm kind of like, but with him, I'm good. And it's really, really amazing how just this incredible, innocent, living in the now being. And I think that a lot of us, we don't give them the credit that they deserve for the intelligence, for the understanding, for, you look at them and you just know.
Intuition.
Kind of yeah. And thank you, intuition. That's what I was looking for. Yeah. And when you mentioned, go back to how you mentioned how like the positive change program, and, how we need to spread it, and just financial support. You mentioned how it's not government run, but it should be. So tell me more about, like, how can we make that transition, and even if we should either keep it private or
I don't think it should be government run. I think it should be government supported.
That's what I meant.
They don't do a very good job of running things. The shelters and those are all government run. So the government has a hand in this already. The issue is why I feel in particular, as it applies to Marley's, Mutts, and Pawsitive change, it's critically important, because if we're talking about positive change, 2.5 million people are incarcerated and have a extremely narrow path back to redemption in any sort of life. I mean, it's so narrow, it's a razor thin edge. And if you waver even just a little bit, you're going back to prison. So it's just a much bigger idea that we're talking about here. And that's why it needs to be supported big time. We're rehabilitating individuals who are the most maligned, the most disenfranchised. I mean, can you think of anybody who's done something like, I'm a drug addict, I'm a recovering drug addict and alcoholic. Are people going to refer to me as that forever? Because people have no problem referring to someone that went to prison as a convict for the rest of their life. People have no problem saying it's a criminal. They call you a criminal. whether you were 17 years old when you were incarcerated and you grew up with no parents, they are going to call you a criminal. And so I just think the reason why positive change needs to be, scaled to as many places as possible is because we need to redefine how our culture views formerly incarcerated. These are in many cases brilliant, gifted, loving, supportive, wonderful, smart, innovative, creative individuals that we ought to be tapping into, not preventing from having any sort of existence in our culture. I mean, and on top of that, guys like Jamal and Jason and Troy and everybody else that's gotten out of our program and succeeded, they got through the gauntlet of prison and came out the other end intact. They came out the other end better people in many cases, and that is a challenge. And so those are people that I want to be around. Those are people that I want to gain information from. Those are people that I want to get strength from. And that's what's important to understand. Rescue dogs were disenfranchised and maligned because they were not understood. We now understand them, so they get a better shake. Pit bulls still don't. But incarcerated and formerly incarcerated, we're not trying hard enough to understand who they are. And who they are, in many cases, are beautiful beyond belief human beings. And we're going to miss that. And that would be the most ungodly thing you could do, is to deny someone from realizing who they are because you have some bullshit preconceived notion about who you think they are.
I agree. And even people, I've had like debates of people and friends, and it's always respectful and everything, who are, think opposite. And I say, okay, fine, let's look at it this way. Why would you want to prevent somebody from being a productive member of society? Why would you want to keep somebody who has the ability to not only, create a job or possibly start dog training business and create more jobs for people and in sense, help society that way, and even be inspirations to others to change?
Yeah. Are you a different
stop?
person than exactly 100%? Are you a different person than you were last week?
Oh God, yeah, actually.
So can you imagine if you were judged for the rest of your life on a crime that you committed 22 years ago when you were 17, to not be forgiven by your peers, by your culture, by your people, by your country, by your city, for maybe your whole life? You can't vote. You can't participate in regular community dialogue as you should be able to. And on top of that, there's 10 million children that are directly connected to and affected by incarcerated parents. And so you're talking about 10 million children who may very well follow suit in some similar pattern if there isn't an interruption. And that intervention, we're responsible for that intervention. And
we're making one person's mistake possibly go on to generations. Not possibly, we are. That's what's happening. Yeah.
And at the end of the day, rescue is wonderful because we love the contrast. We love saving something that was in this condition, and then looking at death and a life in a shelter, and then now look at it. It's got a home and a purpose and a family. And it's the same thing with these guys. So if we can just couch it, if we can just present it the same way, I really think, and I see it happening. I mean, Jason Fahm is a friend, and I follow the Wrongfully Convicted podcast. I follow a lot of different organizations that are prison related and prison reform related, and people are starting to get it. Guys like Shaka Sangor, outspoken dudes that have spent a lot of time in prison, that can get in front of a camera and explain to you who they are, why they are, what they are, and help you understand, really the story arc of a criminal, from beginning to end, and really help you fall in love with them. Like I love Shaka. I love Shaka, and I mean, let me make an even more profound statement. I mean, I probably have deeper love for men that are incarcerated right now than a lot of people on the outside that I interact with regularly. There is a love and a mutual admiration, and we've kind of just been there for each other, whether it be through letters or whatever, or in-person communications. They're just special people, and I just think they need to be reintroduced, to our society with a bit of a different through a bit of a different lens. And I think America's ready for it. I think America loves the second chance. I think America appreciates a rise from the ashes. That's what we are. That's what America is. It's what many of us are. The American dream The idea of the American dream is that everybody ought to have access to it. That is why it's the American dream. That's what makes it different from any other dream, the Chinese dream or the pick a country.
Yeah,
And,
any
and
dream.
that's yeah, that's what's made America special, is that everybody, regardless of your social economic, where your starting point is, has the potential to succeed. And we got to get back to that and really understand our roots.
I agree. I like that a lot. And oh man, I had a thought and it just totally whiffed away.
Right, we both burn-hearted. You just did it to make me feel better.
I was like, right, I was like, and you know,
I interrupted myself and then asked you to finish my sentence.
I was like, did your screen freeze? Or you okay, Zach?
No, I had I need to download the new Zach software.
Yeah, I was like, my boyfriend and I will be talking, and he's the same way. His brain is, a million things, and I'll be talking, and all of a sudden I'll go. He goes, and his friend was like, "What's wrong?" He goes, "She's downloading. She's fine." I'm like, "Wait, hold on."
Give me a minute.
I'll make a sentence, talk about two different topics, and yeah, it's fun. You know how it is.
I totally do. I am a tangent built on top of a tangent. Yeah.
Yeah, I love tangents. They're so much fun though.
Totally.
And that was such a good
It's all good. I mean, I think we covered a lot of really, really wonderful stuff there. I mean, I know it's a little bit weird to be mixing in so much prison talk. We're talking about, human beings instead of just animals, but it's all tied together, it's all critically important. And some of this, the reason why rescue and, the reason why there's like an army of people that follow all of this is because of those transitions. It's because of those rags to riches stories. And we got an infinite amount of them. So, I encourage people out there to go follow some incredible pages. Go follow Reverse Rescue. Go follow Road Dogs. Go follow the Bell Foundation. There's just so many great stories out there. Go follow Stray Rescue St. Louis. And you can follow along and kind of, I don't know. Those are just some of my favorite pages. The Dodo. God, the Dodo is always good for spiritual uplifting.
Yeah, those are good, happy, warm, heartwarming, happy, smile in your day kind of videos.
Yeah, Rocky Kanaka's got some incredible videos too. He's a wonderful guy, and he's a good segue, because one of the things rescue needs is people like Rocky. Rocky's somebody who started out. I don't know if you're familiar with Rocky Kanaka, but he's got a bunch of really incredible videos, YouTube page, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff, and he's done some really great things for us, helped us build a Wheelie World at the ranch, and just a lot of other things, whether it's donations or certain campaigns for us. But he's a business guy that was brought into the pet world, and he's understood it for what it is, and he's helped bring more of that outside ideology in. And that's what rescue needs is we need to be welcoming to more innovators and more individuals who are going to help us save more lives. And if we if we continue to be combative and pugnacious without, rationale, we're gonna be on this hamster wheel for a very long time. But as it stands now, I think we're in a kind of a golden age of rescue. More people. It's so bizarre with COVID, but more people are fostering and involved than maybe ever before. Albeit in a very strange kind of modified way, because how we rescue dogs is totally different now. Shelters are closed, but we can still rescue, but they have to be handed off to us. It's a very different situation. But it's a really good time. It's transitional, and it's all, if you graphed it on a chart, if this is 15 years ago, the attention and the success has just been, it's a 45-degree angle up. Everybody's been across the board.
Yeah. And coming to a kind of, won't take you too long here, and just for our purposes of kind of helping best get out there and all that kind of stuff, I'm going to ask you this: what do you think the 2 white stripes as a symbol for rescue dogs is going to help do for the dog rescue world?
What do I think the 2 white stripes as a symbol? Well, anything that's unifying, right? Anything that brings us together, that we recognize as a symbol of our work. There aren't a lot of things. It's funny that you say that too, because there's something so pronounced about that. It's very understated, but you recognize it no matter what. You know exactly what it is. it's very strange, but it's totally unifying. You know exactly what you're going with, and if you guys continue on the trajectory you're on, you're going to be very, very helpful.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping. I mean, we're hoping to just kind of bring more people in and create that sense of a community of, the Stripe Squad. Like, I want to rescue, and also kind of also make dog rescue like this cool thing.
Right.
Like not
Right.
like the old smoking ladies, like like
so
let
really
people know
that-
like they're cool, hip, cool,
yeah, that's what I thought.
whatever.
It's rad.
Yeah.
It's rad. That's what I thought. And now we need energy.
Oh, hold on, Zach, you're cutting out a little bit. I'm sorry. Oh, you froze. Wait, are you back? There you are. Okay, sorry. You would turn into a robot.
Oh, it's all good. But yeah, I think we just we need new, fresh energy that continues to innovate, continues to think differently and outside of the box, and that's what we're doing. We're on that path.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, man. Cool. Thank you so much. It was awesome.
Yeah, you did great.
Thank you.